There are 3 things that will make teaching yourself Spanish significantly easier. Y en este video quiero explicarlos para que no hagáis los mismos errores que he hecho yo. But before we get into those 3 things, there's something super important that I would like to mention about learning Spanish in general, something I think everyone starting out should know, which is that, especially if you're teaching yourself Spanish, there's 3 basic phases to this whole process. First up, there's a foundation phase where you build up a basic set of vocabulary and grammar. Then there is, in my opinion, the most difficult phase, which would be the becoming conversational phase, where you take your foundation of knowledge from the first phase and begin applying it to real world conversations so that you can understand how people talk in the real world. And then there's the third and final phase, which is the refinement phase. In this phase, you're already really good at the language. You're just taking it that extra step further to become truly fluent. All right, now the first point that is going to make teaching yourself Spanish a lot easier is do not try to skip the foundational phase. You simply cannot get around the fact that you can't hold conversations and you can't understand native speakers if you don't have a base amount of vocabulary and knowledge of grammar. This base set of vocabulary does not have to be super extensive, not at all. It just has to be enough to get you going so that you can move on to phase 2, which is the becoming conversational phase. Now, I'm currently learning Portuguese, which you can watch me learn it in real time on my channel, but essentially what I'm doing is I have this list, okay, this list of common words. This list includes words like the, a, an, common verbs like to say, to be, to understand, to think, words like thing or good, bad, just these very basic foundational words that you can't get around. If you want to form sentences, you have to know these words. So my recommendation is to just get it out of the way. For the purposes of this video, I'm realizing it'd probably be good. I'll just digitize these words and I'll put the translations to Spanish and in a PDF, and you can just have it in the description so that you can begin the process of this foundational phase. So then where do you move on from the foundational phase? You've built up your basic set of vocabulary. What do you do next? Well, the answer is you have to start forming sentences. This is the becoming conversational phase. Now, the initial part of the becoming conversational phase, and my second point for making teaching yourself Spanish way easier, is to focus on conjugations, simple conjugations of this list of verbs. Now, there are only 8 verbs on this list, but these 8 verbs encompass so much of what you will say in day-to-day speech that it's truly valuable to just, again, get it out of the way, learn these ones first. Now, of course, with to be, it's a little more complicated because you have ser and estar, but in its, I guess, most basic explanation, you use ser to mean something more permanent, something that is. And then estar is more for things that are temporary, things that are like in the moment. So if you said soy triste, that would be that you're saying I am sad. But really you're saying like you're a sad person. Like that is what you are. Okay, soy triste. Now, if you said estoy triste, you're sad right now. You're sad in the moment. The other reason I recommend these 8 verbs for being the first ones you learn, other than the fact that they're so commonly used, is that basically all of these verbs are irregular verbs. So their conjugations are not following the rules exactly. Through mastering how to conjugate these irregular verbs, you'll gain a much deeper and better understanding of how regular verbs are conjugated. Now, to practice these conjugations, I recommend you just start trying to write down sentences. Essentially, take a look at the list of words that you know and write down a sentence in English using those words. So if we take this sentence, for example, I am happy because I'm going to the park to talk with my friends. This sentence is only using words from our existing list, but you can see that this is a real sentence that you might actually use in the real world. Now, when we translate it to Spanish, we get estoy feliz porque voy al parque para hablar con mis amigos. And that really is kind of the rest of the becoming conversational phase, is trying to form sentences, realizing that there's some words you don't know or you don't know how to conjugate something, and then figuring it out, putting it into practice, and learning it on the spot. And this brings us to my third and final point. If you're teaching yourself Spanish, how to make the process a lot easier. And that has to do with the fact that most of us do not have access to native speakers. Ultimately, you're not going to get good at the language you want to learn at Spanish if you do not speak with native speakers on a regular basis for a relatively long duration of time. So given that you're teaching yourself Spanish and you might not have access to native speakers around you on a regular basis, I recommend that you use resources online to speak with native speakers. Now this brings us to a very important concept, okay, that every language learner I think learns at some point, but it's the idea that a native speaker of a language is not going to be nearly as good at explaining how to learn their language or explaining concepts about their language as an actual tutor or someone who taught themselves the language or some kind of teacher of the language, which is why I recommend a service like Worlds Across. Worlds Across provides you with a roster of tutors who are not only native speakers, but who have real experience teaching the Spanish language. Okay, that's really the sweet spot right there, what you're looking for. It's truly not good enough to just speak with any native speaker, because at this stage in your learning, you need someone to correct you. You need someone to be able to explain concepts to you, which is why you need someone who's not just a native speaker, but someone who has experience teaching the language. In my opinion, what gives Worlds Across the most credibility is that they have a rigorous tutor selection and training process, okay? These tutors are not just anybody. They have to go through a screening, a detailed selection process, including training and continuous development to make sure that they're at the top of their game. And additionally, there is an emphasis on a judgment-free environment, okay? You are going to learn Spanish best when you don't feel judged, when you feel free to make mistakes and not be embarrassed. Now, through Worlds Across, you can do one-on-one classes with native tutors, as well as have personalized coaching. There's even group sessions if you don't want that sort of one-on-one type of environment. All right, you can see here that there is a huge list of tutors from a variety of different countries like Colombia, Venezuela, Argentina, Chile, Mexico. So really, anywhere you might want to hone in your Spanish on or learn a particular type of Spanish, they have tutors. If this sounds like something that you think could genuinely help you, then I have a code in the description, a link in the description to get a discount off of your first month. So happy learning to everyone. I hope this video was helpful in some way, and I will see y'all in the next video.